Today on Dr. Phil.
Her fiancé is making her choose between him and her child.
I kicked my stepson out of the house.
He waved a loaded gun in his siblings' faces.
Start firing this.
She's abandoned her son before.
You're constantly asking someone else to raise your child.
Will she do it again?
I don't know how to be a parent.
So you thought I'll send him to visit my mother for 11 years. Let's do it.
Have a good show, everybody. Here we go.
This is a safe place to talk about hard things.
Stand by. We'll count you down.
Today's going to be a changing day in your life.
5, 4.
I am not giving up on you. Well, Stephanie says that she has been put between the ultimate rock and a hard place by her fiancé, Buck, who is forcing her to make what she calls an impossible decision. Stephanie says Buck will no longer allow her 16-year-old son to live in their home because he believes Stephen is, and I quote, an absolute menace and a horrible influence on their 4 other children. Therefore, Stephen is currently living with Stephanie's 23-year-old half-brother, James, in Florida. She says since Buck won't allow Stephen back in the house, she's ready to move to the Sunshine State today to be with her son. But if she does, she faces Buck's biggest threat. Leave for Florida, and the wedding is off.
My life is being torn into a million pieces. My fiancé, Buck, has given me an ultimatum to either go with my son in Florida or stay here with him. Buck says if I leave, our relationship would be over.
What are you going to do? Are you leaving?
Oh, I kind of have to. I mean, he's my kid. The situation with my son, Stephen, is that we feel he's unsafe to be around the other children. When he gets angry, he smashes my furniture, hits holes in the doors, destroys his room. One time, my son got mad because we took his phone away from him, and he ended up punching holes in a couple of my doors. There was an incident in our home where my son found a gun out in the garage. He proceeded to chase the children around the home with it, cussing at them, threatening them.
This gun is not on safety. Look in that camera. You see that bullet? Look.
I was not home at the time. When I found out about the gun incident, I was more scared about what Buck was going to do when he found out.
I'm going to kill you for a job. If I don't beat you right now, it's going to be way worse.
Another time, while we were asleep upstairs, my son chased his younger brother around the basement with a leather belt that had silver metal brads all over it. It was Buck's decision to remove him from the home. He's now living with my younger brother. I understand the reasoning why Buck doesn't want him here around the other children, but at the same time, I don't want to turn my back on my son. I really love Buck. Right now, my relationship with Buck is rocky. I do feel like Buck is being unreasonable. He's not giving me a good enough reason why it can't work.
Well, you're probably thinking, hey, if my kid's not welcome, I'm not welcome. But things are not always simple on Dr. Phil. There's more to it than meets the eye. Buck says Stephen's outrageous and dangerous behavior has threatened everything he has built. And if Stephanie leaves for Florida, the relationship is over, and there is more to this than meets the eye. Take a look.
I feel like if Stephanie leaves, that we're not moving forward with us, period. If she's leaving and going 1,600 miles away, Stephen has torn us apart in many ways. My stepson is angry, defiant, and disrespectful. He doesn't think the rules apply to him. He wants what he wants, when he wants it, and he wants it now. The other 4 children, I feel like, are somewhat bullied by my stepson through stealing from them. He won't abide the rules of the home. The straw that really broke the camel's back was the gun incident. I did chase him around the house on 2 occasions, pointing the gun at him, and the gun was absolutely loaded. He didn't know it. That's a bullet right there. Where's he at? I'm about to start firing this ball. When I asked him about it, he said, "Come on, Dad. You know, I took the clip out. It wasn't loaded." The fast forward 3 days ago, we're moving. I popped the chamber back on the gun, and the bullet flew out. So the gun was loaded. I kicked my stepson, Steven, out of the house for modeling bad behavior, stealing, doing dangerous things around the other kids. I was pretty fed up. Just felt like change wasn't going to come. Our relationship with Stephanie is definitely up in the air. We're definitely coexisting in the home. It's got some resentment building. You know, romantically, it's kind of stagnant. If Stephanie leaves, my children will have a huge void. They call her mom. They depend on her. Our business is going to suffer. I want normality. We put something together here. I want to keep it.
Well, joining us virtually are Stephanie and Buck. Is there really no middle ground? Buck, why is the relationship over if she leaves?
I mean, I feel if she leaves, that she's not capable of moving Steven forward and getting him where he needs to be as a young man. So going there would just be a long pause, and life moves on, and I would have to make such big changes that I wouldn't be able to invest in a long-distance relationship, is what I feel like.
Stephanie, what do you say? As I said when I was introducing this, the common sense would be, hey, if my children aren't welcome, if my child's not welcome, then goodbye, I'm not welcome, I'm out of here. But Buck seems to think that it's not going to help if you go anyway, so what's the point? What do you say?
That's absolutely how I feel. I need to be there for my son, and if I'm, if he's not allowed here, then I need to go be with him. But I also have a younger son that calls Buck Dad that doesn't want to go.
But that's a new attitude for you, right?
It absolutely is, yes, sir.
The fact of the matter is, this child is 16 years old, and you haven't raised him for any sustained period of his life yet. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir, that is true. I've been a drug addict most of my life. Yes, sir.
Right. And so if we look at the history of you pawning this child off, you're hardly even on this list. You're hardly even on the chart.
No, sir, I'm not there at all, hardly.
So why all of a sudden you've got this mandate that you just feel like you got to be there? Are you going to salve your own guilt, or are you going for what's best for him?
I don't know what's best for him. That's where I'm at. I don't know what's best for him, and I do feel guilt.
When he got out of foster care, you took his brother, but not him. Where was your resolve then when you said, whoa, no, wait a minute, this is my child. I'm the mother. I'm going to step up and raise my children here. Instead, you say, okay, you go with your grandmother, I'll take your brother. What kind of message do you think that sent to him?
A horrible one, like he wasn't wanted with me.
Now, Buck, you say the kids call Stephanie mom, your children and her other child. You've only had custody of your children for 6 months, right?
Yes, sir.
And until then, they were where? With who?
Primarily with their grandparents on their mother's side.
Okay. And why were they not with you or their mother?
She and I had split, and she took the kids to Georgia.
Why did you lose custody to start with?
Well, I was under the impression they were with their mother. And after some time and after going to court and reading some transcripts, I realized that she had lost custody at the ages of 6 or 8. So then signed our rights over to her mother by saying that I wasn't present and couldn't be found, when in actuality I was present and could be found.
You had to learn through court who had custody of your children?
Right, yes.
Well, that didn't sound like you were a very present father if you had to learn through the court who had custody of your children.
Absolutely not. So many things, looking back, that I could have done differently. She would call me with the kids in her home, maybe on her weekend or whatever with the kids, and it was just, it was just as much my fault.
Buck says he cannot allow Steven to return to his home because he bullies the other children, encourages them to do drugs, whips them with belts with metal studs, but worst of all, Steven waved a loaded handgun in his siblings' faces. We're going to talk about all of that after the break.
report is held against her.
Between 6 to 8 years old, Stephen acted out in school, threatening to kick the teacher or cussing at the principal.
He wasn't punished very often. He would end up going on a shopping spree the same day that he got in trouble. There's only been one instance where he blew up. We ended up in a chokehold, basically, to restrain him.
And later, what is the deal with you constantly asking someone else to raise your child?
I don't know how to be a parent.
One effects, ready 41. Roll 41 stop.
I was a drug addict for many years. I was not a parent at all. My son Stephen was born with meth in his system. I had been clean for a long time. Towards the very end of my pregnancy, I ran into some old friends and I just happened to get high. After I had gotten high, I had him the very next day and he had methamphetamines in his system. My son lived with my mother majority of his lifetime. When my son was 5 years old, the cops came into the home that I was at looking for someone that had a warrant. My son happened to be visiting me that day, along with my younger son, and a couple of days later, CPS came and got them and took them into foster care.
Well, Stephanie admits her son Stephen had a troubled childhood due to her earlier drug use. Now, she's been sober for 6 years. But now she says his behavioral issues are coming between her and her fiance, Buck, who says that Stephen is no longer welcome in his home because he is a danger to the other children.
The very first behavioral issue Stephen ever had in his entire life was when he got into foster care. While he was in foster care, he bit and kicked the foster parents, and they called CPS. They came and got him. He was diagnosed with ADHD, mood disorder, and put on medications. Between 6 to 8 years old, he acted out in school, threatening to kick the teacher or going to hit the teacher with a hammer, cussing at the principal of the school. My youngest son stayed with him and my mom when they got out of foster care. He was very mean to him, bullied him, and poured dirt down his throat more than one time. There was another incident when he was younger. He went to live with another family member and did okay for a minute, and then I guess he had kicked her and she sent him back to my mother. When we first started living together, Buck and my son were very close.
He was looking for a father figure. He needed guidance, and he wasn't punished very often. He would end up going on a shopping spree the same day that he got in trouble. His behavior has always been able to escalate to out of control.
One time we got into an argument. He ended up pushing me down in the hallway and walked out of the house. I had to call the police.
There's only been one instance where he blew up and kind of threatened me. We ended up in a chokehold, basically, to restrain him. He doesn't participate in school at all.
The majority of his classes were failing. They were like 30s, 40s, and we took his phone away from him and he lashed out, tore up some of my furniture.
He will tell the other kids that, we're making way too much out of it. He's not doing anything wrong. Everything is normal behavior.
Okay, clearly there's dysfunctional behavior here. Are y'all aware that Stephen says he's doing this on purpose?
No, sir, I'm not.
What he's told us is that his intention was to get put out of the house.
This is his history. If that's the case, then, I won't dispute it. But just to know that these things have been and with no help will continue as far as I know. So if that's the case, I hate that.
He keeps getting suspended from school and he's failing. Right. He smokes weed and he's trying to get the siblings to do it as well, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
He's breaking into bedrooms and stealing money. And you talked about him bullying his siblings, chasing them around with a belt. And then kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was waving this handgun in the siblings' faces. And he, of course, insists that the gun wasn't loaded. And we all know it's the unloaded gun that kills people, right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
I just want to take another listen to this audio of Stephen waving the loaded gun in his siblings' faces. Let's listen to what is being said.
You think that's a real bully? You think I'm just playing with you? You think that's a real bully? You think I'm bully? Get down! Get back! Get back! I'm about to start firing this. This gun is not on safety. This gun is where is he at? Look in that chamber. You see that bullet? Look. That's a bullet right there.
Okay. Do you think was he showing a bullet in the chamber?
I don't know.
I don't know. I know that when I popped the chamber a week ago, there was a bullet that flew up out of the gun. That's what's terrifying. You expect those things from a 10-year-old and, you know, to accidentally do something like that. Not a 16-year-old. That's just too much for me. I'll be honest with you right now, Dr. Phil, I've never seen that video until you showed it right now.
Okay. I got you.
Yep.
I got you. And
okay.
And I'm going to agree with you on one thing here, is that this is the trigger for this is not necessarily him wanting to move. The trigger for this is the neglect, the abuse,
Absolutely.
the abandonment that has happened to this child his entire life. Records show that he was abused, neglected, molested, everything you can possibly imagine. This child has had a childhood from hell, and now it's all coming home to roost, and everybody's going, we can't have this. Well, you know what? You wrote on the slate of who he is, and now you're reading it back. Stephanie's mother, Vera, says she doesn't believe for a second that Stephanie will leave her family in New York and move back to Florida to raise Stephen. Why? Well, Vera asks, when has Stephanie ever chosen Stephen over herself? We'll talk about that after the break.
Buck gave Stephanie an ultimatum. If a man gave me that ultimatum, I'd pack my stuff, load my kids, and I would be on the road. That's just me.
My son said he missed his family in Florida. I thought that it would be a good idea, since COVID happened and they weren't in school, to let him go visit my mother for a little while. Because he was failing in school, we sent him down there with hopes that they would have took the same kind of disciplinary actions that we were taking towards him, and they did not. They bought him a motorcycle. My son stole my mother's credit card for some things on PlayStation and stole my mother's card to visit a girl. He didn't even have a driver's license. My mother didn't punish Stephen for stealing her car or misusing her credit cards. That's typical behavior for my mom when it comes to Stephen.
What is the deal with you constantly asking someone else to raise your child? He's not doing well in school, so you thought, I'll send him to visit my mother. You've sent this kid to visit for 11 years.
The deal is that for my entire life, I've been a drug addict. I don't know how to be a parent.
Are you doing anything to learn how to parent?
I'm not taking parenting classes. I'm not taking that step to do those things.
So we talked to Vera. She says she raised Stephen for the first 11 years of his life, and he is now more than she can handle. Last time he stayed with her, she says he stole her car and her credit card.
My grandson does feel abandoned. As long as there was an open CPS case, Stephanie got to see my grandson just about every weekend. No open CPS case, maybe a weekend here, a weekend there. It was never anything regular with Stephanie. Buck has no emotional attachment to my grandson. Buck gave Stephanie an ultimatum. I think Buck is wrong. If a man gave me that ultimatum, I'd pack my stuff, load my kids, and I would be on the road. That's just me. My grandson living with us, sometimes it was hard. He was diagnosed with ADHD while he was in foster care. My grandson has had a lot of issues with anger. One time, he didn't want to eat supper, and he just pushed me. I tripped and hit the stove and just broke my finger. I think my grandson, living with Stephanie's brother, is a wonderful idea.
My grandson looks up to his Uncle James. He's awesome with Stephen. Stephen listens to James. I think Stephanie needs to stay in New York with Buck.
Well, joining us virtually is Vera, and Vera, Buck can speak for himself, but I think you're exactly wrong. I think Buck has made an emotional investment in this child. True, Buck?
Absolutely. Man, I love that boy. He's an amazing little kid.
He doesn't like the discipline, but he says you've invested time in him.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Vera says that Stephanie pawned Stephen off to other people his entire life. So, Vera, you've seen this while she was into the drug world and everything, the first 11 years of his life for sure, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he got to be too much for you to handle, but until that time, how was your relationship with him?
It was hard. Especially when Stephen went into foster care and they put him on the medication that he was on, and we started having anger problems. And I just kind of had to learn how to not let it escalate. I mean, he did have a lot of problems in school with the teachers and stuff.
This kid has a rage inside him that I totally understand. I don't blame him. I don't endorse any of his behavior, but I understand 100% of it. I don't blame him for being pissed off and feeling like he is a footnote to everybody else's life, because that's exactly how he's been treated.
Yes, sir.
And he's here.
I agree.
And Stephen says he does not want to go back to New York and live in Buck's home, nor does he want his mom to come and remove him from his uncle's house where he is right now, because he's in school playing football and says he is finally happy. Well, we're going to talk to him after the break. We'll be right back.
I feel like most of the stuff I do is actually just typical teenager stuff. The gun incident, I was just playing around. I was just trying to like scare them. Buck has anger issues and he yells a lot. He was just getting more strict for no reason. I really like where I'm at right now. My uncle has been here for me my whole life, and my mom really hasn't.
Real 41 trash.
I'm not a strict parent. Our children, they're spoiled. They've got every device in this home. Our rules are really basic. It's pick up after yourself, do your one chore a day, and participate in school, participate in an extracurricular, whether it be flute, boxing, football, whatever it is. Every child is individual. Some kids have to maintain 70s, some are 85s, and some are 90s. Every child is different, and that's definitely the way they're treated in this home. That's truly the only rules in this home. Stephen can't be told what to do. That's the main problem.
Stephen admits he has some behavioral issues, but claims that Buck and Stephanie overreact to every little thing. He says most of his bad behavior is just out of a typical teen, and he hated living in Buck's house because of his strict parenting that included grounding him for months at a time.
If my mom showed up here tomorrow, I don't think I would go with her. If she told me that things would be different, I would maybe consider it, only if things are gonna be different when I go back. Like, not just being all about disciplining us, being able to have fun sometimes, and not just be always serious, even when we're doing good. Whenever we do just something small, they like take it out of proportion, and they blow it out of the water, basically. One time I was disrespectful to a teacher at school, and I ended up getting grounded for a full month. I used to have anger issues. I have some anger outbursts, but it's not as frequent as it used to be. But I do think Buck has anger issues. He gets mad very easily and yells a lot. My mom and Buck argue a lot, and that makes me want to fight with Buck and with my mom whenever I'm grounded for something that I really shouldn't be grounded that long for. It kind of makes me want to fight against them. It was just getting tiring, and I just didn't want to be there anymore. I feel like most of the stuff I do is actually just typical teenager stuff, like having an attitude, being slightly disrespectful, smoking weed. The gun incident, I was just playing around. Mom and Buck weren't home, and we were just all at the house by ourselves, and I was just trying to like scare them. But I knew that once I did it, it was wrong, and I wish I didn't do it, because it was just kind of stupid on my part. Mom and Buck kind of took it out of proportion like they do with most of the things. I really like where I'm at right now. It's just, whenever I go to New York, it just feels like a bad vibe, because I don't really like living with Buck and my mom. I feel like me and my uncle have a special bond, and I really like it here because my uncle has been here for me my whole life, and my mom really hasn't.
Well, you're not seeing Stephen's face for a reason, and that is because if you watch at all, you know that I do what I can to protect kids' identity and faces. He's joining us now on the phone. Listen, there's no question that you've not had a typical childhood, and you're old enough now to start being responsible for your choices and for the behaviors, because the consequences start landing on you pretty hard.
Yes, sir.
And if you have anger issues or anger blow-ups, whatever you call them, and you need help with that, then you need to take that help. You need to get professional help with a therapist or whatever, so you don't make some choices that wind up really backfiring on you.
Every time I go do therapy and stuff, I just feel like it's always the same and it never really works.
That's up to you to take those tools and create value.
Yes, sir. I understand.
It's just like a coach. They can tell you what to do on the football field, but they can't catch the ball for you. What do you want to get out of therapy?
Really just being able to control myself when I start to feel angry and stuff, and just like control my impulsive decisions that I make. Because sometimes I just do stuff without thinking about it.
Well, that's a very manageable thing, and you are coachable. I mean, you're doing well in football, right?
Yes, sir.
Then you are coachable. And if you can be coached in one thing, you can be coached in another. You say that your mom and Buck don't listen and blow everything out of proportion, especially Buck. But you have to understand that Buck has priorities as well. He's just gotten custody of his children, and he has a duty to keep chaos out of his home to those children as well. And things like the incident with the belt and the gun, those things just are not acceptable at any level. And you know that, and you knew it after you did it, right?
Yes, sir.
We have to take a quick break. Now, Stephen's 23-year-old Uncle James says there have been 0 issues with his nephew since he moved in with him 3 weeks ago. But is this a realistic and effective living situation for Stephen, or are they just in, shall we say, the honeymoon phase? We'll meet James after the break.
My nephew is a really good kid. Stephanie is definitely parenting out of guilt. If Stephanie came to take him back, if it got so serious that I had to take her to court, I probably would. Stephanie has lost the privilege to raise my nephew.
My brother is an amazing person. I just don't feel like that's a good place for my son to be because it's interrupting his life. I just don't think that it's time for him to be raising a 16-year-old boy. That's my job.
The first month, it's great, but in time, he will revert to disrupting class, flipping on his grades. When it's time to be disciplined, he's just a kid uncle. It's not his place to deal with. So I worry. My stepson is always on his best behavior. When he moves to a new school, he's very polite. I just don't see how someone without kids, 23 years old, could possibly do that. I just don't think he really knows what he's signed up for.
I've got a question for you, Buck. You're saying he's just a young man, good intentions, but doesn't really know what he's getting into at this point. Do you have a better alternative?
That's why we're here. Well,
it's easy to point out what won't work, but do you have an option of something that will?
No. It's not that James wouldn't work. It's I just feel like it's not for him. It's not something he should be dealing with. And right now you see that they've got a great bond, right? And it's like the bond you have with your grandfather. That's crowded when you have to parent.
All right, well, here's what Stephen's Uncle James has to say.
Stephanie and Buck's parenting style seems to be very strict, kind of my way or the highway. My nephew is a really good kid. Anytime he's been with me, he really brightens me up. Just like every other kid, he has those kind of smart remarks every now and then and a little bit of an attitude, but I wouldn't say anything more than a regular kid. School is going great. He's in football. I guess my parenting style is just really being open with him. I've always said strict parents make sneaky kids, and I agree with that 100%. I kind of let him do his own thing. My nephew has never had a really good structure. Growing up, I watched that and I wanted to help him because I love my nephew with all my heart. I think my nephew needs a one-on-one bond with somebody, and I don't think he gets that with Stephanie and Buck. I think that she's had her opportunities. Stephanie is definitely parenting out of guilt. Some of the reasons that he acts out are because of his past. It's hard to expect somebody to act a certain way when you didn't raise them. If Stephanie came to take my nephew back, at this point, if it got so serious that I had to take her to court, I probably would. Stephanie has lost the privilege to raise my nephew. Stephanie is going to have to choose between Buck and my nephew. To be really 100% honest with you, I think she already has.
Joining us virtually is James, and God bless you for stepping up and extending a hand to this kid right now.
I think somebody has to, but thank you for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you hadn't got any more idea than a goose what to do with a rebellious 16-year-old, right? You're new at this.
Yeah, you could say that. I'm definitely new at it.
Yeah, that does not disqualify you, by the way, by any stretch, because I haven't found anybody else that's got any more idea than a goose what they're doing either. But you realize that at this point you're in the honeymoon phase. He has had some experiences that have left some open wounds inside him that are way above your pay grade. There are some things that he has experienced, and there are some abandonment issues, some abuse issues, some things that are going on that take very skilled professionals to help him navigate the maze. And it's not something you can love him out of. It's not something that you can companion him out of. There are things that he needs very specialized help to know how to change his internal dialogue, how to forgive certain things with himself and with others, to get some kind of resolution to, so he doesn't have this anger welling up inside.
I've dealt with a lot of the same things that Stephen has had to go through, and I don't know how much Stephen knows that we are similar, but I definitely think that that's a topic that will come up in the future, and it will help me be able to guide him through any obstacles he comes to terms with while he's in Florida.
Well, empathy can make a big, big difference, no question about it. So next, what should the players in this drama do? What should Stephanie do? What should Buck do? Where should Stephen be? Can James be the answer to this solution? We're going to try to talk about all of that, and I'm going to give you my thinking and why after the break. I received 11 letters from Stephanie this year asking for my help with her 16-year-old son, who she claims is defiant, angry, and out of control. Now we have 23-year-old Uncle James stepping up and putting his arm around this child that's been raised by others and been through foster care. And, Robin and I have worked as national spokespersons for CASA, court-appointed special advocates, a number of years. And, Robin, sometimes the number one outcome determinative factor in how a child turns out is having someone step up, put their arm around that kid, and help them navigate the maze. True?
That's so true. I think one thing I always like to point out in a situation like this is that I hope everyone always remembers when a child becomes a foster child, it's never because of the child. It's never because of anything the child did. A child becomes a foster child because of an adult or multiple adults. It's because of what the adults have done that caused that child to go into the foster care system, that caused that child to become a foster child. So when it's time to help that foster child as they grow up, when it becomes a time like right now to help Stephen, it needs to be an adult that steps up and says, I know that there have been a lot of adults in this family that have caused you a lifetime of trauma and angst and just a horrible time in your life. I'm going to be that adult. I'm going to be that adult in this family that is going to put my arm around you, and I'm going to be there for you. And I feel that that is coming from his uncle.
Yeah, and that's why I said God bless you for doing this, for stepping up for him at this point. And what I'm saying to you, James, is I do believe Stephen should stay with you at this point. You want to be proactive here and deal with these issues before they come up. Right now, while you're in the honeymoon phase, this is the time to start saying, okay, we're going to have conflict, and when we do, we need to have a plan of action. This is the time when you and Stephen need to go together to talk to somebody about some of your common experiences and get a plan from a family therapist that says, okay, look, you guys are going to have conflict. Let's agree ahead of time to have emotional integrity, and both of you say, when that happens, I'm going to do this and you're going to do that. You need to use the resources, and we'll help you set those up. I'll provide some for you. Listen, we're in a pandemic. I will arrange immediately for 10 sessions for you with a doctor-on-demand therapist so you can do it on the computer so you don't have to put yourself at risk. And I'll do it for both of you so you can get some professional help. The time for crisis management is before the crisis occurs. I mean, you understand that, right?
100%.
So the question becomes, what else needs to be done here? I'm going to share the rest of my thoughts right after the break. My advice, just based on my study of this case, and by the way, we do have an advisory board here at Dr. Phil, made up of some of the top minds in psychology, psychiatry, sociology, nursing, medicine, from the top learning centers in the country. And I often consult with these experts, and this really wasn't a close call. And I believe very strongly that Stephen is probably in the most stable situation he can be in right now. Stephanie, I would recommend that you do get into some parenting classes for Stephen's benefit, for your benefit, and for the other children's benefit as well, and that you make a serious commitment to building a long-distance relationship with Stephen across time. And Buck, for you, there's no middle ground here. You just got custody of your children. You cannot afford any drama or chaos here. There is no room. You have to have undivided loyalty to your children 100% here, or you're in jeopardy of losing them. Now, in this scenario, Stephanie can stay in the home with her other child and parenting with your children, and Stephen can be with James in Florida, and we can work to make this work out and revisit it a year from now or 6 months from now and see where things are. But right now, I think you are in the healthiest, most stable situation for everyone involved. That's my advice to everybody involved here.
I'll give it 100%.
Thank you.
Okay.
James, I love you.
Yes.
I want to thank my guests today. If you at home want to have your own Doctor On Demand, go to Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and download Doctor On Demand app. For more information about today's show, log on to drphil.com. You can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe to Robin's podcast, I've Got a Secret. If you haven't subscribed yet, you're really missing out, because Robin discusses all of life's little secrets and big secrets. And it includes guest stars like Jonathan Adler, where they discuss the secret to finding your creative inspiration, and Jenny Hutt, who dishes out the secret to a career pivot, all sorts of things. Let me tell you, Robin has lots of secrets, and she's ready to share them with everyone. So subscribe and find out the secrets to living your happiest, healthiest life. We'll see you next time.
If you'd like to be part of our virtual audience and you have a computer with a camera, log on to drphil.com and click Be Part of the Audience.
Hey everybody, after the show, I think Dr. Phil really helped Steven realize that he had some issues personally that he needed to work on. Me and him have done that together. He has been awesome. Everything's been very smooth. The only thing that's been a little rocky is his grades in school. But other than that, we've set up goals for him. Stephanie and Buck have been pretty easy to work with. Everything's been going pretty smooth there. They visited not that long ago and got a little rough for a couple days, but he's happy, we're happy, and everything's been awesome. So we really, really, really appreciate Dr. Phil and everything he's done for us, and hope everything continues to go as smoothly as it's going right now.